Can everyone hear me? This is Keenan.
Yep. Yeah, I can hear you.
Awesome. Great. Matt, do you want to advance the slide? Oh, so this is sort of bird dogging 101, and then like specifically what is SNAP PNHP's strategy of using bird dogging in light of the 2018 midterms, and then obviously since the midterms are coming up pretty quickly, and there probably won't be that much time to implement what you learned in the next 6 days. It's going to be more about like the future moving forward, getting people, getting those new freshman Congress people and holding them accountable. So if you want to move forward, Matt.
Sure.
Great. So this is our roadmap for the hour. We're going to talk about what bird dogging is, why we do it, and then we're going to go through each of through the 9 steps of bird dogging as put together by our wonderful former political advocacy chairs, Andy Hyatt and Janine Petetto. And then we're going to talk about what our strategy for the 2018 election is. And then we'll close with some examples and some discussion and questions if there are any. So bird dogging, what is it? You may have heard various things, and there's various interpretations. You know, there's no strict, it's not like medical school, there's no strict rule about what bird dogging is, but basically this is like the traditional version, a gun dog trained to retrieve birds. Alternatively, on the next slide is a definition from Public Citizen, which is an advocacy group. So the issue and the demand, the hunter who's trying to get it, and his bird dog that retrieves it for him. So from Public Citizen, basically bird dogging is you're going to follow, monitor, document what people or groups working on a particular issue, for example, a public official, are doing, and monitor them and push them to respond to questions that you have about a particular subject, and in a manner that's going to influence the subject, but also brings the public's eye to what they've said, what they haven't said, or what you are trying to get them to accomplish. So you can envision this as like protesting, but protesting with a purpose, with a direct, specific aim in mind, because you're going to go to whatever public forum a candidate or politician is, and you're going to get them to say some kind of commitment to your cause. So next, I think is
It's taking a bit. There we go.
Yeah. So here are some examples. So this is I'm sure a lot of people saw that during the Kavanaugh hearings, the courageous woman who confronted Senator Flake in the elevator. And this is a form of bird dogging that brought attention to this issue. I guess we could watch like a little bit of it. Yeah, probably like 20 seconds maybe.
All right, let's try this out. Hopefully this works. So
yeah, that'd be good.
I don't know if the audio is going through.
Oh, okay, that's all right. That's so basically the gal confronted Senator Flake with a personal story about why this issue mattered to her, and then she asked him a series of pointed questions. And the whole thing was captured on like multiple media outlets. Obviously, like they're in a tiny little space. He has nowhere to go. So this was like a very, I mean, ultimately it didn't work, but a very effective method, and it was very engaging and very poignant. And a lot of people saw this. So this is a sort of unconventional one because this lady was in DC and had direct contact with the senator. But a more traditional form of bird dogging, and one that we're going to sort of describe the process of, is on the next slide. So this is Hillary Clinton, and these are some 350 Action protesters, which is an environmental group. And then this is their video on how to bird dog. So they are in the process of, they're basically at the end of a rally with Hillary Clinton, and she's going down the line of people shaking their hands. And this is the advocate who's like grabbed her by the hand, and he's holding her there and giving her and asking her very specific questions about her receiving money from oil and gas, I think oil and gas industry, and saying, Hillary Clinton, Senator Clinton, or Secretary Clinton, will you stop taking money from the oil and gas industries? So this was a really great one as well, and obviously they captured it on their video. They've got like a couple activists working together. One of them's asking the question, and the other is capturing on the video. So this is, and then they disseminate this video in by whatever channels they have. And then on the next slide is a sort of classic example of AIDS advocates and Al Gore when he was running for president. This is like, they just chased him around and followed him around at every political rally that he went to, and worked to get him to oppose what the pharmaceutical industry was doing to South Africa at the time. So this is like probably the origins of bird dogging, and something that Paul Davis talked about when he was going around traveling around training people on bird dogging a lot. So this was another very effective strategy. When they had basically like, he tells this story all the time, but they just like looked cheerful, and they thought that they were like purely Al Gore supporters, and then they had snuck this like cloth banner in their like pockets, or like one person's, couple people's pockets, and they whipped it out in the middle of his rally and said, Gore kills AIDS drugs for Africa. So pretty amazing stuff. So those are some examples, like I was saying, like bird dogging doesn't take a particular form. It's very amorphous, and it's whatever is most opportune at the time. Depends on the venue, depends on the person, it depends on the ask. So why would we bird dog? For all of the reasons that we've just discussed, it can be extremely effective, especially if you've got like a ton of media outlets on your face, like while you're asking a question. Also, politicians love to avoid answering difficult questions. So in our case, healthcare reform and single payer. In that one example, environmental issues. If we want, so we need to expand the political discussion, the political conversation, by bringing this up in very public ways. And bird dogging is a very effective way to organize this in order to reach a goal. It's not the only way, but it's one tool in the toolkit of advocacy techniques. And because it's you against a politician, and you're going to get them to commit to something in a very specific and poignant way. You can go ahead, Matt.
Perfect. So does anyone have any questions so far? I like to always check in every once in a while to make sure that we're not going too fast or too slow or anything. Great. So as you can tell, like as Keenan said, there's a lot of different forms of bird dogging. There's a lot of different ways that you can bird dog, and a lot of different events that you can do it at. But the hard thing is like, what events can you do it at? You can see it's a lot of public events. And the good thing about bird dogging is that, you get direct access to the person that you need to influence. So, I mean, they had Al Gore, they had Hillary Clinton, and everything along those lines. So it's kind of important in the sense that you need to be able to find a very public event. And that's kind of where you start. So the first thing that we're going to do is like step one, you want to find an event, and we'll go more into depth with each of these in a few minutes. In step two, you want to gather a posse or a group of people, because it's always a lot easier to do things in mass and with a lot of people who are around you, especially because public events tend to get really crowded. Number three, you want to make a plan. You obviously never want to kind of like wing it, because politicians are really good at talking and being able to sway conversation in ways that benefit them, but you want to be in control of what's going on. And so you got to make a plan. And once you have a plan and you find the event you want to go to, you want to arrive there early so that there's a lot of other strategic planning that you can do to make sure that you get your question and you get your ask and you get your commitment in the very end. And so once you're there, you got to get your chance to ask. And then finally, after all this planning, you want to ask your question and get an answer, obviously. And as we said, you want to get your media attention and then finally get a report out because, as you know, there's, it's not just your small posse, but it's part of a larger movement that goes on as you do these things. And when you get into activism, advocacy, and organizing, it's always part of a bigger picture. And getting a report out to your allies so that they can be like, oh, this person committed or this person skirted a question when your person or your target moves to another area, you got other people who can kind of follow that up. So getting into finding an event. You want to gather information about where to find an event, and there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of look into events. And with social media nowadays, you can go in and, kind of almost seem like you're getting overwhelmed with like, oh, what event can we go to? What are the ones that we can kind of get the best access to? And so especially during recesses when your legislator takes their time off of DC to come back to your state or to your district, they held a lot of town halls. And so the town hall project is something that there's a conglomeration of a lot of different town halls in your area or just around the entire country. And so allows you direct access to finding your target, your legislator, and so that you can get your ask. Also, you can like their page on Facebook. They tend to announce where they're going to go to on Facebook or follow them on Twitter and basically subscribe to their emails. A lot of these types of websites and whatnot, these are all sources that you can find out where they're going to be. So I don't have to read this entire page to you, but like there's a lot of different ways basically as a point for you to find out where they're going to be, whether they're going to look on their website or whether they're going to do it on the radio. Some of these are a little bit better. But I do have, I think it's worth noting that you can call their campaign offices and being like, hi, I'm an avid supporter of so-and-so, even if you're not. And you want to know where they're going to be because you want to be able to support them. And so like, hi, I have a few friends who are wondering where the next couple of opportunities are to meet candidate so-and-so. And then while you have them on the call, you can ask them like, what's the format? When are the doors open? Will there be a Q&A? Because that's ultimately what you want to get to and know about if there's a Q&A so that you can ask your question. And ultimately, as you can probably surmise, smaller events are easier to ask your question and get them to commit to something. And there's not that much of a crowd to deal with. So after you find an event, no matter what, you want to gather a posse, gather a group of people who can, support you in different ways, think of better questions and whatnot. And plus, it's a great way to connect with other single-payer advocates. You can go to campaign appearances together. You can support each other. Bring other friends who are new to the bird dogging arena or the advocacy arena. And so, like, it's always a good way to get your feet wet. And then once you have your posse, your group, you can give everyone a job. There's the recorder, photographer, the person who asked the question, press person, and you can have multiple question askers. And we can get into the reason why you'd want multiple people doing the same job later on when we go to the other steps. And plus, it's good moral support to have. So once you kind of have your friends and whatnot, then you can move on to what you're actually going to do. So when you make a plan, obviously everyone should know this plan and including their role. So you want to consider where to best position yourself for what's going to be happening in the particular event. Is there going to be a handshake line? Do you want to place yourself in a handshake line, or are there going to be places where they're going to take individual photos if it's a smaller event? Are there going to be times where you can talk to staffers or talking to press? And is there going to be an available area to record the conversation that's going to be happening? If it's going to be really crowded and you're only going to be shaking hands, are you going to have other people in your posse to help to record that conversation, or is the media going to do it? Similar to what happened with Senator Flake, where there was a lot of media around. So there's a lot of different areas that you want to be able to position yourself for, whether it's for like a town hall meeting where there may or may not be a lot of people, or whether it's going to be a more intimate, event with like, just meeting people on the street or whatnot. So, and then you want to think about kind of bringing a poster if you're going to have that type of event. You don't have to bring a poster. Sometimes it really helps, but it also depends on what your ultimate goal is. Do you want to bring media attention to it, or do you want to actually just ask a question? If you're just going to ask a question, you may not need the poster, but also think about what the poster is going to say, because if you're going to bring a poster that's going to support, that's supportive of your candidate, then they'll be like, oh, these guys are going to be really supportive of me. They're going to ask a really easy lowball question, and so I'll call on them, and then you can throw them off by being like asking your actual question. So and when you ask your question, you want to prepare it. You want to prepare your statement about your issue in advance, in case you want to speak to press, and you want to prepare your question in advance about like what you're going to be saying. And when you're developing your questions, there's specific ways to ask your question so that, like a lawyer, you want to be able to lead your candidate, lead your target, and you want to be able to have it nice and quick because you don't know how much time you're going to have. A lot of the times, you're only going to have like 10 to 20 seconds to ask your question. If you noticed with Hillary Clinton, you had like less than a minute to do your entire thing. With Senator Flake, they were a little bit more adamant about keeping that, what do you call it? Keeping that elevator door open, so they had a little bit more time to tell the story and whatnot. But the point is, they had them memorized. You can write them down in note cards if you feel like you're going to get nervous. But then you can also have follow-up questions on hand for when the candidates give incomplete answers, which they'll inevitably do their first time when they have that question. They either will give incomplete answers, or they'll skirt the question and then answer their own question that they want to answer. So when that happens, you want to be able to know how to write a good question. So here are some important steps on writing a good question. And this is all going to happen over the course of 10 or 20 seconds. So, for example, step 1, you want to thank or praise the candidate for being there and being in time, and giving you the opportunity to ask that question. Then you want to quickly explain the issue. This is what we call framing the issue. So like, hi, Senator Flake, there's a lot of people who are dying of healthcare who can't afford healthcare or something like that, blah, blah, blah. You have, maybe 1 or 2 stats, and then, you want to go into why this issue is really important to you, or why this issue is also really important to the constituents of the target, of the candidate. And so ultimately, then they'll be like, oh, this is really important to my constituents. And then in your question, you want to propose a solution. This is what we call leading the candidate, so that in like lawyers, it's like, oh, or like when you're asking a patient or something like that, and it's like, that's a really good idea, right? Or something like that. That's a really good way to kind of lead your question on. And so you want to propose a solution about, like, say, for example, so many people are dying of a healthcare that they can't afford, but they keep on talking about how single payer is the way to go. And then ultimately, in the very end, you want to make your demand or have your question with a specific close-ended yes or no question. And so it's very easy to get an answer, and it's like, do you support single payer, or will you sign on to HR 676, or will you support Medicare for all in your candidacy, or when you become senator, president, or representative, or whatnot. And so these 5 simple questions, 5 simple points are really important to be able to ask a question. So, Keenan?
Yeah, I would say, it's great to have the question memorized, but it is intimidating talking to elected officials. They're famous, and there's generally a lot of people around, unless it's a more intimate event. So having it written down on a note card is like, I would say it's non-negotiable, because you will forget, and also it's like critically important that there's no wiggle room when the person is answering the question, so you don't want to screw it up, and it's like a lot of pressure. So like, great if you can have it memorized, but definitely have it written down on a note card to refer to. Okay, so the next step, once you've created a plan, you've gotten your posse together, everybody knows what their role is to arrive early. And why is this so key? For a number of reasons. So it really depends on what kind of event it is. But if it's going to be a town hall, for example, when they were trying to repeal the ACA, we went and did this, and there was a line out the door, like 3 hours, like the event was at 4, and at noon there was already a line out the door. So get there early, see what the situation is, if it's going to be really crowded, if it's going to be like complete chaos and shouting, like maybe that's when you unfurl your banner saying, "We love you, Senator Slime," and then he's like, "Oh, these are my people, like I'm going to go to them." You want to be close to the microphones. You want to be close to the front if possible, because that's where if they're going to come and do handshakes with you at the end, you're going to make a beeline to the front of the auditorium or whatever. And then critically important is to spread out. Everybody wants to be with their like crew because for moral support, like we said, but the senator's not gonna go and ask questions from the same section. He's gonna do one in the left, one on the right, and then one in the middle. So if you're gonna get multiple questions, which is really important, then you gotta spread out. So when you're going up like to and then like this is part of the whole, we're gonna portray ourselves as your supporters. Like if you show up with your Senator Slime t-shirt on and you wave at the staffers, you're like, "Hey, like we're so happy to be here. We're so happy to support Senator Slime." They're gonna think of you as that friendly face that they're gonna go to for questions. And then, like I was saying about spreading out early, that's going to be crucial when it comes to following up. Like we were saying, having follow-up questions once you've asked your question, and then look excited. And this is actually a really tough part about bird dogging, is that if it might be a room full of Senator Slime supporters. So you kind of want to get that feel. So if it's a room of people who are really angry at the senator because they're not signed up onto Medicare for All, then you've got allies. Then you've got people around you that are going to be excited that you're passionate about this issue. If it's full of Senator Slime supporters and you're going to accuse him of not supporting Medicare for All, then it might be a less than friendly crowd. But so basically, it's just good to know what the vibe is in the room and then what other people are asking about. So arrive early, very crucial. Not always feasible, but I mean, but as best as you can do. So the next step, right? So this is the key part, is getting that chance to ask. And what are we going to do as soon as the senator has finished his little stump speech, and he says, his staffer says, we're going to take some time for questions. You're going to position yourself strategically close to the microphone, and you're going to raise, or if he's just going to cold call, you're going to raise your hand fast first and the highest. So look really eager, look really excited. You're a Senator Slime supporter, and you're just excited to have the chance to speak with him. And if you don't get your hand up first and immediately and as high as you can, you're going to miss the opportunity. So that's key. Yeah, and actually, so you shouldn't even wait until the senator starts asking for questions. You should raise your hand to ask, even if there's no planned Q&A. And don't be shy, right? Like that's critical, because and like it doesn't really matter if you look nervous. Like you probably will be nervous, but you got to get your hand up there and you have your question written on the note card. And as soon as your question is out there in the air, it's like on the public's mind. It's in the room. It's like, if he doesn't answer it, people will be wondering, why didn't he answer that question? So get a chance to ask continued. So at the end and after the question to the Q&A session, or instead of a Q&A session, he or she might have a handshake line. So that's why you want to be up close to the front. try and get, in this case, you are going to need 2 people because it's probably going to be noisy, and one person's going to need to go shake the hand of the politician while the other person records, like you saw in that 350 video with Hillary Clinton. So 2 people as fast as possible up to the handshake line. The person's coming down the road, handshaking all the people. You grab onto their hand, do the Donald Trump weird like handshake maneuver, hold on to them as best as you can, obviously without being like threatening, and and grab their hand and just speak to them, do your earnest question while you record it on like sit and fellow medical students are worried about the rising cost of healthcare. Will you sign on to HR 676? And then the recorder, who's your friend, who's right next to you, preferably gets it recorded on video. If at worst remember exactly what they say and write it down immediately. So that's getting a chance to ask the person your question, and then you can talk to a staffer. This is, this is probably like after you've asked their question, if you really are looking to get some follow-up rather than like, if your goal is to engage with the staffing, with the person's office versus turning to the media and asking and like getting and reporting to the media that the senator said X, Y, Z. You can look for a staffer. It can be kind of hard to tell who's the staffer. And then, so this is good. If you really can, like this is in the ideal world, get a bunch of people so that you have more time with the candidate or senator or whatever, the target. Oh yeah, and then these are some fun stall tactics. If you are like ready, in fact, like you can do this by yourself. If you're ready, like looking like you want a selfie with the person, you could just record your conversation with them and say like, yeah, so you don't even need like a recorder, but you can ask your question on the selfie that you take, or ask for an autograph is another good way to stall people. And then, of course, don't forget the camera. These are some excellent bird dogging activities by back when Martha Coakley was running in 2014. Some Massachusetts work, good stuff. Oh, Matt, Matt and Hill, and then Medicare for All. Okay, so this is the key, the asking of the question. So you're going to raise your hand fast, first and high. You're going to be near the microphone so that you can and spread out. And then you're going to use that format that the key elements to the question that we went over. So introduce yourself. Who are you? I'm a constituent. I'm here with a group of medical students that really care about the access to insurance. Naturally, like I said, like memory is great, but using notes is fine. And then, so this is a big thing. The candidate is trying to control the narrative. You're trying to control the narrative, and the candidate is trying to control the narrative. So they're going to interrupt you. They're going to respond to your question, but not respond to your question. They're just going to say their talking point about whatever it is about healthcare that they've been prepped with. So that's why it's key to get multiple questions from your group. Because if the candidate doesn't answer your question, which he or she's likely not to do, your friend in the other wing of the auditorium is going to ask the exact same question or say, Senator, you didn't answer that person's question. So my question is now, will you sign up for HR 676? Yes, so you're trying to control the narrative. You're trying to get a definite answer because they're going to interrupt you. They're going to say their talking point rather than answering your question. And just be prepared for that because that's undoubtedly going to happen.
It's always a good tactic to be able to have someone's like, I was going to ask you a question on, your favorite food, but then this person's question sounds so much more interesting. And they'll be like, dang it. They knew that I didn't answer that question. And so, yeah, those are always good times to be able to spread yourself out and act like you guys don't know each other. So And on that note, don't wear the same clothes. I mean, you can always wear like, very supportive clothes, but like don't all look like you're in the same group. So I think that also helps to make sure that, you get called on in different points as well. Anyways, the next step is obviously getting media attention. We talked a little bit about over this, and you guys can kind of understand why it's important to get media attention and to get them to cover your question. And so that the more public their response is, the more they're beholden to whatever it is that they say. So it's like, it's not just someone on YouTube posted up a video that said this and they can easily just, kind of say that's like, oh, that's just someone who faked it. This, if something's on actual media, then they'll be like, okay, this is a little bit more legitimate. So obviously you want to get the press to cover your question and the politicians answer. And this is where some roles become important, because as you're asking a question, as someone is recording it, as there's other people in the audience kind of making a crowd, and so it's easier for you to ask your question, you have media people scoping people out to be like, where's the media and who do I talk to at the same time? So you can, kill 2, 3, 6 birds with one stone, if you're really good at skipping stones or something like that, to kind of search for the media or search for press people and ask them, or at least let them know that this is the question that was asked and this is what was said. Or you can carry a sign, again, another sign, media, talk to me. And like, they actually will be like, oh, you're the person who, or you're the people who asked that question about single payer, about Medicare for all. And that's a really, really hot topic based on, what has been surveyed and whatnot. So it's totally fine to be able to ask those questions or to be able to aggressively seek out the media. And so whatever the press asks you, respond with your prepared statement. And so then they can follow up with that and with you about what's going on. So obviously you want to plan ahead. So having that press release available to plan ahead, then the media can also understand what's going on as well. And then you can also discover which members of the press are writing about the issue by searching Google News. The internet is your friend in this sense, so that you can be like, oh, this person's doing that. Oh, I saw read your article on so and so, and it was really, really nice. I feel like this is an important issue to medical students and to the future of the medical profession, who's going to be delivering this healthcare. And so that voice could be missing from a lot of their articles, and you could be that voice. So once you're following up with that and having that press release, you can write your letters to the editor. You can talk to our communications team on the PNHP staff, Claire Fauci or Dixon Galvez-Cyril, and email them both about like, okay, so we did this bird dogging, we had this press release or something like that. What else can we do and how to do this? Because ultimately, it's really, really, really hard for you to be able to do these things on your own. And so we're here to support you, whether it's nationally or whether it's Keenan or I, or whether it's the national office, to be able to do these things. And you guys need to study so we can actually have a skeleton out for you. Just let us know what it is that you want to say or what it is that you're planning, and then we can like send you the rough draft and be like, this is what it is. And so I don't know if this is going to play. About like someone, this is Lindsey Graham that we did recently, bird dogging him about single payer, and I don't know if you guys can hear that, but like how he's able to try to control the question, and then someone else is constantly kind of pushing back on him and interrupting him and keeping control of the situation and the frame. But since you guys can't hear it, unfortunately, we'll be able to post this up online when we need to. So so once you do that, then you want to get a report out, as I said, to other single payer or other bird dogging activists. And so there's different ways you can do it. Generally, if it's part of a PNHP group, then you can do it with your Snap Facebook group. But there's also listservs and what we call the Bird Dog Nation. This is, you might have heard Keenan mention his name, Paul Davis, but like Bird Dog Nation is an entire national network of bird doggers all over the country who are asking these candidates not simple questions, but questions about their stance on why they are killing their candidates by taking away their health care, why they're not in support of a single payer system and whatnot. And so like subscribing to the Bird Dog Nation is something that will keep you not just up to date on like their conference calls and where they're doing and what's going on, but also the reports that are going on, what other bird doggers are doing. And so it'll get you in touch with everything else. And so this helps you piggyback on what other people are doing and inspires the group. So you can show off your pictures as well. Pictures like, you know, Janine Petito, who was who helped to make this presentation before. So do you guys have any questions right now on everything that we just said? I know we kind of like blitzkrieg through all that stuff, but.
Hey, I have a question.
Sure.
So the Bird Dog Nation site, that looked like an email address. So do you just email saying, hey, I'm interested in like finding out, getting updates, and they will add you?
Right.
I assume yes, but I wanted to clarify.
Yeah, it's that, and then like, well, if you email that as a Google group, they'll see it as a request to join, and then either they'll email you back or they'll just add you to the email list, and then they generally have conference calls based on how urgent the need is. So like they just had one, I think, last week. It's every week, every 2 weeks or something like that. They'll have a conference call to be like, what's going on. But you just have to email that address, and you generally will get added.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions in the chat? I know some of your microphones aren't working, so if there's any other questions, feel free to put it up in the chat or anything else. So we did have some time if you guys wanted to practice asking a question. And if you guys want to kind of like tool your question, we do have time at the very end. We'll talk about our strategy for 2018, or Keenan will. And then during that time, if you want to like think of a question that you think you'd want to ask a representative or a senator or something like that, then you can ask it to us, and then we can give you some feedback on it by way of role playing, whether we're a representative or senator, and kind of acting like a senator who would kind of skirt the question or whatnot. And so kind of a fun thing, a little bit harder to do when you're not in person, but something if you guys want to ask your question, Columbia. Here we go. Question. The question is, do you have any suggestions for times when bird dogging might lead to confrontation, especially if security or staff persons become aggressive? So the important thing for what was mentioned is like when you do the handshake line, for example, you're shaking the hand and we tell you like not to let go. So the important thing is if you're not letting go, it's perfectly fine to not let go, to make sure that it's like you're asking the question, you're constantly looking like you're shaking the hand. It's like, hey, Senator Graham, hey, Senator Obama, back when he was Obama. There was a time, for example, when I was bird dogging back in 2007 in Philadelphia at Drexel. We were in the handshake line with then Senator Obama, and shaking his hand and being like, hey, Obama, will you commit to, like, we were talking about global AIDS and PEPFAR, for example. And, you know, we talked about it, and it was like asking the question. It was taking a little bit longer than anticipated. But he's like, it's like, you know, that's a very important thing. And it's like, well, will you commit? And it's like, and he started like slapping the question asker's hand. It's like, let go of my hand. I need to kind of move on. And you could see the security was starting to come through. And so, you know, at that point, you just kind of like let go and move on, because this is why you have other people in your group being able to ask a question. If you don't have the time to ask your question, other people can cover it for you. And so, you know, you do not want to have confrontations. This isn't necessarily a civil disobedience situation. This is a little bit more of just like testing the waters, kind of like pushing the boundaries a little bit, but not necessarily to the point of getting arrested. There's another conversation and there's another presentation for something like that when you actually need it. That situation might lead to security or staffs or people possibly getting aggressive, but you never necessarily want to escalate the situation. And you want to avoid them as much as possible. As you know, in medicine, you know, prevention is the best form of treatment. So that's ultimately what you want to do. Did that answer your question? Awesome. Cool. All right. You can think of other questions in the meantime, but we can talk about the strategy for 2018.
Yeah, so this is some examples of actions that you can take. So if you're interested in tracking a particular candidate, or so we were kind of thinking broadly, like at this point, bird dogging candidates is probably not going to be the best move. But in the time, in like sort of the lame duck period, where freshman congresspeople who are like newly elected but not seated yet, are getting their staff together and they're sort of formulating their ideas and their stance on various issues. So that's going to be the sort of opportune period. So you can assign someone in your chapter, if this is something you're interested in doing, to follow a particular candidate. And then, like we were saying, that list of opportunities to find where the people are going to be. So like before they're seated in Congress, they're probably hanging out in their district. They probably don't necessarily have an office, but you can get in contact with their campaign staff, or maybe they're going to host a town hall or some kind of meet and greet with the new congressperson or something. So assign someone to follow each person. Like these events can pop up so sporadically. Like town hall project.org is a good resource, but like, for example, one of our senators was like, the only reason we found out he was having a town hall was like he had distributed some flyers in a local library in a podunk town in Louisiana. So like it could, you kind of just have to keep your eyes and ears open to these opportunities. And then they might be like fundraising events, which you don't have the money for, but you just got to play it by ear, basically. And then, yeah, so find some local events and then get connected. So the political advocacy chairs this year, Taylor Cox and Thomas Jackson, and those are their emails. You can get in touch with them, see what their plans are, strategies are for the year. So that's within your staff chapter. And then more broadly, we're thinking about so there's more broadly two categories of people who have already said that they support single payer, who have already said something on healthcare, single payer, Medicare for all, and haven't haven't signed on to HR 676 if they're in the House, haven't signed on to Bernie's bill if they're in the Senate, maybe they say that they're for health, they believe healthcare is a right, but they haven't explicitly said, I support Medicare for all. So whatever it is, whatever the next step is, that's going to be our goal for that group of people. And then there's another whole group of other people. I mean, I know that we're all hoping for a blue wave. We're hoping for a bunch of freshman Democratic Congress people who are going to need to have an opinion, who need an opinion, or don't have an opinion yet, or maybe they do. And so this is sort of the spectrum of what freshman members of Congress might have opinion-wise. So either they're like unaware, they don't have a set opinion yet. Maybe they're uninformed. They think that Medicare for all is going to bankrupt the U.S., so they haven't supported it. Haven't signed on yet. Maybe they are like on the fence. It's unclear. They haven't heard from a large group of constituents, so they don't want to sign on to anything, or maybe they're actively opposed. So the best way to go about this is to build relationships, not only with the staff, with the media, local media, local or more national media, so for example, if you bird dog a member of Congress, a freshman member of Congress at the town hall, you bring up this issue, the candidate responds, but like not in a good way. You can go up to the staffer afterwards, or you can email them later and say, hey, I was the guy that asked a question in your town hall. The candidate's answer wasn't very robust. So like, can we work with your office to figure out your position, to explain why we as medical students care about this issue, and why we as constituents care about this. And then incumbents is the other group, and the key there is to find out what they've said and then hold them accountable. Through public shaming, through public whatever you need to do. So this is the period where we were going to take your questions. So non-threatening constituents who look like they fully support our position. And do we have any questions?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, so I'll give one. or I'll do one. I'll pose it to you, Matt, unless you want to pose one.
Yeah, go ahead. You can pose one, and we'll see what we can do.
Okay.
This is
so,
unplanned and unrehearsed, by the way. So, yes, let's call on this very eager-looking fourth-year medical student.
yeah, so I've got my Senator Slime t-shirt on, and I've got my banner that says, build that wall, build that wall, build that wall. So, Senator, I'm a medical student in your district, and I'm worried about the rising rates of drug-resistant syphilis, and I just want to get your opinion on what you think the best solution for this issue is going to be.
Well, syphilis is a very important issue because, STDs, they go all over the place, and, we just really can't deal with such diseases because diseases, I think, really, really hurt the constituents. And I really want to make sure that all the diseases in the world are treated and make sure that no one else can get sick. So we're going to have the best healthcare system in the world. No one else is going to be able to beat our healthcare system. You'll see, no waiting lines, nothing like Canada or anything like that. Mexico will have nothing on us. I don't see any other country going to beat our healthcare system. My plan is going to show you guys, it's gonna wow you guys. You won't believe it. It's gonna be the greatest in the world. All right, next question.
That was a very Trumpian response. The best plan. So I think it was clear that was a pretty poor question. It was kind of vague, unfocused. It was very open-ended. I know in medical school, all we learn is open-ended questions, but we want the exact opposite. We want the answer to be embedded in the question, and it should be a yes or no question. It should carry a lot of force, or it should describe why it has a lot of force behind it. The number of X number of constituents, X number of doctors, X number of medical students that care about this issue that are in PNHP or in SNAP. So that was too vague, too broad, too open-ended. Matt, do you want to do a slightly better one?
Okay, let's see. All right, Senator Slime, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate you coming out here. My name is Matt Moy. I'm a physician who practices out in your county, and I see about 90% of your patients because it's a very small county. And every single time I hear people who are really, really frustrated and down on their luck and unable to afford their healthcare, and they keep on talking about how this Medicare for all and the single payer system is just so much more efficient. And they've showed me some of the research, and the research shows that we're 37th in the healthcare rankings in the WHO, and that a lot of the industrialized nations have a single payer system, and that a lot of the times we make sure to all the other industrialized nations have the best healthcare system.
I fully support what you're saying. I appreciate rural docs doing the hard work, being out there in the communities. We're going to get you the funding you need to continue supporting our people.
But Senator, I just need to know, it's will you support a single payer system when you become president?
Well, the healthcare is a really complex issue.
I just want to know, can you say yes or no? I mean, it's a really important issue for a lot of your constituents and a lot of the your future voters.
I appreciate your passion for this, citizen, and we'll look into it and get back.
It's actually something that's really not just one citizen, but it's up to 10,000 people who are part of your swing district.
Anyway, yeah, so you can see the banter goes on, and that's why it's good to have multiple people, multiple questions, so that it's not just you back and forth arguing with the candidate. It's obvious that there's multiple people that care about this issue. Yeah. So that was good. I was trying to cut you off. That's why succinct questions are good. That the factoid about how many physicians in the community care about this issue, that sort of thing, is important.
Yeah. So
here's a good example This is like preface it with who you are, why this is important to you, why you have the full force of a community behind you. As a voter, I'm concerned about healthcare as a human right, which, like, for example, if they've said something about that, you can say like, Senator X, on November 17th in 2017, you said that you believe healthcare is a human right. I believe that a single payer plan, a la Bernie Sanders, is the best type of system. Will you endorse a single payer system? So the answer is in there. If you agree with Bernie, if you believe that healthcare is a human right, you agree that single payer is the best system. And it's a yes or no question. Do you endorse? Yes or no?
Yes.
And then, thank you. And then another good example would be Senator X. I'm a medical student at Tulane. I'm a member of SNAP. There's 40 other members of SNAP at my school, or the X number of PNHP members in my state who care about this issue, who believe that healthcare is a human right and single payer is the best form of healthcare, the best system to get people that their healthcare. We're worried about the rising cost of insurance. Will you co-sponsor HR 6766, Improved and Expanded Medicare for All? That's good. Who you are, why you care about this, how many people are behind you, a yes or no question, and the answer is embedded into it. Well, kind of. Great. On that note, are there any questions or thoughts about moving forward? Otherwise, we can turn it back over to Ashley for the closing. Oh yeah, good links.
Yes. So I've also shared some links to what we've kind of mentioned before. So if you look, let's see if I have some of this stuff open. I'm going to share some of the links that are on here. We'll share with you via the email that was provided. So here's, like, for example, the Tracking Candidates 101. Here's another thing on Bird Dogging for Health 101. But if we look at a quick action report, this is all you really need to do. It's like your first name, last name, and email address. And then it goes on to be like, well, where did this occur? What organization happened, and provide location, and then when it happened, and whatnot. And so, like, this is a quick, like, a quick form for you to kind of fill out, so it's not so open-ended, and tell us more about the event, and whatnot. And so, like, these are simple things. Or you can go onto our website on pnhp.org and oh, sorry, that's not what I want. Yeah, so if you go onto the single payer talking points, then on our website, then we can also kind of give you some good ideas about, like, what's going on here and how to kind of, like, frame your discussion and frame your talk. So we do have a couple of good, like, resources for you that we can send you after this chat is over. All right, any other questions? Or, oh, let's get rid of that. All right, sounds good.
If we don't have any more questions, just want to thank everyone. Thank you, Matt and Keenan. That was a really great presentation. And go ahead and sign off. Thank you, everyone, so much.
Yeah. Please keep in mind that we have a week of action planned for November 12th through November 18th. Just look on the SNAP website, on the Facebook page, as well as the SNAP website, students.pnhp.org. And you can find a lot of the resources on there to kind of get you through some of the actions that are going on, some of the webinars, as well as some of the other trainings that will be happening that week. So take a look there, or feel free to email organizer@pnhp.org for more information. Great, thanks guys. We'll email you the links and whatnot.